Hello and welcome to the E-Squared Inventory Management Setup Guide. In this video we're going to go over the setup process for E-Squared Inventory Management. We'll go through each one of the settings, we'll go through the simple install as well as the complete install, and kind of talk about the different steps and the different fields that you need to fill out. So on this first screen you're going to need to enter the user ID and key for your account. You can get this information by creating an account on the website. You can then go to account info and you should see the user ID and key displayed there. I would suggest highlighting the key and using Control C or right click and copy, and then using either Control V or right click and pasting it into the key field. Once you've done that, you can click next. There will likely be a short delay as the software downloads the database in the background. Once that's completed, you'll be moved on to the next screen. One thing that is worth mentioning is if you need help at any point during the install, there is a help button at the bottom corner that will take you to a text-based guide that will take you through every one of the settings in the install process. So on the next screen you have a choice between a simple and complete installation. The simple installation goes through just the most basic settings, and that's probably fine for most users. The complete install will go through several other pages of settings. This will allow you to further customize your experience. Once you've decided on installation type, just click on that installation type and you'll be taken to the next screen. This guide is going to go through the simple process first. At the end, the last few pages that will be talked about are part of the complete install. On the next screen, you're going to have a choice between two different inventory styles. These styles are discussed in great detail in the guides on the website. It's also discussed in the inventory management overview video, so I'm only going to briefly cover it in this video. Basically, a SKU-driven inventory system is designed for new inventory, so if you sell brand new pairs of shoes, new shirts, things like that, more than likely you're going to want to use a SKU-driven inventory system. If, for example, you sold used clothing, then you'd be more likely to use an item-driven inventory system. The main difference between the two is in a SKU-driven inventory system, you will typically add items to existing SKUs. You can create new SKUs, obviously, but most of the inventory you get, you're going to be adding to an existing SKU because you've had that inventory, you get another shipment of it in, you add it to that same SKU. In an item-driven inventory system, you are typically creating a new SKU for almost every item. You can still create SKUs with multiple quantities, but for the most part, when you receive an item that you have received before, it's still usually on its own SKU because it's likely that item has different characteristics and conditions than the first item you received. So the item-driven inventory system is more designed for people that sell used items or unique items such as paintings or crafts, things like that. As I mentioned, if you want more information, please see the guides on the website or the inventory management overview video, and they will give more examples of the difference between the two styles. Once you've decided on an inventory management style, go ahead and click Next, and that will take you to the SKU item number setup screen. This page of the setup is going to go through settings for your item number or SKU. If you want to know more about item numbers or SKUs, please see the guide or the inventory management overview video. The prefix is just the starting two characters or two digits of your item number or SKU. The SKU length is just the length of the item number or SKU. You have assigned SKU. This is the field that determines that item number or SKU field, if that number is automatically filled out, if it simply fills it out but you can change it, or if it's completely a manual entry. If it's set to auto, you cannot change that field. If it's set to suggest, you can change that field, but it will be filled out for you. If it's set to manual, you'll have to enter in your own item number or SKU every time. As far as a prefix goes, it's probably best to just keep that at 10 or 11 unless you have something specific you want to use. The SKU length, 8 is probably good enough for most small businesses. It's unlikely that you're ever going to get higher than 8 characters. However, if you wanted to go to 10 or down to 6, you could do that. However, 8's probably a good number for most. As far as assigned SKU, you're probably best going with whatever the default is. If you're using a SKU-driven inventory system, then having that set to suggest is probably the best way to go. If you're using an item-driven inventory system, then it's probably best to have that set at suggest or auto. Once you've completed this screen and hit next, that'll actually complete your setup process. Now the rest of this video is going to go through the complete setup process. In the complete setup, after the SKU and item number screen, you'll be presented with the purchase order setup screen. PO total price determines if you're asked for a total price at the end of a PO. Value type determines if when you're entering a PO, if the value that you put in under cost is the cost per unit or per line. So if you enter a PO with 5 pairs of shoes on it and you have that set to per unit, it assumes that the cost is per pair of shoes. If you have it set to per line, it assumes that the cost you enter is for all 5 pairs of shoes. As far as the PO total price, if you always know the exact cost of every item you enter, then you may want to change this to false. Otherwise, you probably wanted it true, particularly if you are planning on using an item-driven setup. That will enable you to enter a lot of items, and then it can actually calculate a cost for you based on the estimated value of the items you put in. As far as the value type, that's going to be set at per unit for almost every business. However, if you do need to set it at per line, you can do so here or in the settings after setup. On the next screen, you have several location setup options. The first option, use location, determines if you want to have location functionality on or off. The second field determines if location is required when entering in a new item. By default, it's set to optional, but you can require it if you want every item to have a location. The list update option determines how the program will react if the user tries to add a location that's not already in its item list. If you have that set to yes, it will accept a new entry and add it to the list. If it's set to no, then it will not add the item to the list, but it will still accept any new items put in. If you have it set to in list, then any entry made must be in the list. In general, the defaults on this page are probably set correctly for most businesses. Even if you're not sure if you're going to use location, there's really no downside to having the option enabled. As far as if the field should be required, if you're going to use location and you want to make sure location is entered every time, then having that set to required is an option. However, for most people, optional will probably be fine. As far as list update, yes is probably best for most people. However, if you have several employees entering information and you notice that you're getting information you don't want, you may want to consider setting that to no or in list. And that completes the setup process for the complete install. If you have any questions, please see the guide on our support page, or you can click on help at any point during the install. Thank you very much for watching the video, and thank you for your interest in E² Software.